The Arizona Federal Theater was alive with energy that night. Bright lights cut through the room, bouncing off rows of cameras as the air filled with tension and anticipation. Every seat was taken. Over 2,000 people packed into the theater, their voices blending into a low electric hum. Outside, hundreds more gathered, hoping to catch even a glimpse of history in the making. This wasn't just another political event. This was a showdown. Across America, millions of viewers tuned in, families huddled together in living rooms, students streaming on laptops, retirees glued to their TV screens. Everyone knew this wasn't going to be a typical night of polite debates and predictable sound bites. Something was different. Something was coming. For many, this night carried the weight of more than just politics. It was about race justice, power, and respect. For others, it was personal. And for nearly every American watching, one thought kept echoing in their minds: tonight could change everything. From the far side of the stage, Donald J. Trump emerged, his presence impossible to ignore. The crowd erupted in cheers from his supporters, a wave of red caps flashing under the bright theater lights. Trump raised his hand in a grand sweeping motion, a practiced gesture meant to command the room, to remind everyone who he believed was in charge. His trademark red tie hung perfectly straight against a crisp white shirt. His stride was confident, almost theatrical, as he made his way to the center of the stage. Every movement screamed power and control. The camera zoomed in on his face, a smirk stretched across his lips, eyes locked forward, radiating calculated arrogance. Trump paused, letting the noise settle, feeding off the energy of the moment. Inside his mind, he was certain this was his night. He believed the stage belonged to him. He believed millions watching from home would witness the moment he humiliated Barack Obama on live TV. To Trump, tonight wasn't just another political event. It was a battle, and he came ready to deliver the knockout punch. From the opposite side of the stage, Barack Obama emerged, and the energy in the room shifted instantly. There was no swagger, no grand gestures. He didn't need them. His presence alone carried a weight that silenced even the restless murmurs in the audience. Obama walked with measured steps, his tailored dark suit perfectly pressed, a subtle blue tie catching the soft glow of the stage lights. He greeted the moderator with a calm nod, then turned slightly toward Trump, offering a polite but restrained smile. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't defiance. It was control, quiet, unshakable control. Unlike Trump, who fed off the roar of his supporters, Obama didn't need the crowd to validate his presence. Instead, he commanded attention by doing the opposite, staying calm, grounded, and deliberate. The contrast was undeniable. Two men, two worlds, two entirely different strategies. The audience felt it. The tension grew heavier, almost tangible, like the charged air before a storm breaks. Every person in the room and millions watching at home sensed the same thing. A collision is coming, and no one knows who will survive it. The moderator had barely finished introducing the first topic when Donald Trump leaned forward, gripping his microphone tightly. His voice came out sharp, loud, and commanding, slicing through the tense silence like a blade. "Tell me, Barack," he began, his tone dripping with accusation. "If your policies were so great, why did I inherit a broken America? Why did the country need me to fix what you couldn't?" Gasps rippled through the audience. It was a bold, calculated strike, Trump's way of setting the tone, forcing Obama into a corner before the night even began. His words were heavy, loaded with frustration, and designed to ignite conflict. Trump's voice grew louder, his delivery rapid, pounding each word like a drumbeat. "You divided this nation. You weakened our economy. You left our borders wide open. And now I'm the one fixing your mess." Supporters in red hats roared with approval, clapping and whistling, while others in the crowd groaned and shook their heads. The energy in the theater exploded into a clash of cheers and boos, the tension spiraling higher with every second. Trump smirked, confident that he had landed the first knockout punch. To him, this was the start of Obama's humiliation. But in the quiet poise of the man sitting across from him, the real game had just begun. The crowd was still buzzing from Trump's attack when the cameras cut to Barack Obama. He didn't move. He didn't rush. He didn't even reach for the microphone at first. Instead, Obama leaned back slightly in his chair, his expression calm, almost unreadable. He took a slow breath, adjusted the microphone with deliberate precision, and smiled faintly. That single subtle gesture shifted the energy in the room. Seconds passed. The silence stretched longer than anyone expected. You could hear the faint hum of the stage lights, the rustle of papers. even the nervous coughs from the back rows. The entire room was holding its breath, and then with a steady voice, low, clear, and razor-sharp, Obama spoke. Leadership isn't about pointing fingers, it's about taking responsibility. The words landed like thunder. For a moment, there was stillness, and then the entire theater erupted. Applause thundered from wall to wall. Some people jumped to their feet. Others simply sat frozen, processing what had just happened. Trump forced a tight smile, but the cameras caught it, the flicker in his eyes, the subtle shift in his jaw. He had thrown his hardest punch, and Obama had just flipped the entire narrative with one single sentence. The theater erupted in applause, echoing off the walls like rolling thunder. Supporters of Obama leapt to their feet, clapping and cheering, their energy electrifying the air. Even some who had arrived skeptical, undecided, watching quietly from the sidelines, couldn't help but nod in agreement. For the first time that night, the momentum shifted. You could feel it, a subtle but undeniable change. Sensing the loss of control, Donald Trump leaned into his microphone and tried to cut in. "Oh, give me a break. Barack, nobody believes that. Look at the mess you left behind." But his words were swallowed by the noise. Applause still thundered. Cameras panned across the audience, capturing smiles, raised eyebrows, and whispers. The crowd wasn't hanging on Trump's words anymore. They were locked on Obama. And Obama, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't rush. He simply waited, letting the cheers settle naturally, his calm presence magnifying his authority. When the room finally quieted, he leaned forward slightly, his tone measured and steady, as if he was speaking directly to each person, one by one. The contrast was striking. Trump fought to dominate the room with volume. Obama commanded it with composure, and the audience was beginning to choose which one they trusted more. Donald Trump wasn't done. The brief applause for Obama only seemed to fuel his fire. He leaned into the microphone, his voice louder, sharper, each word meant to cut deep. "Barack, you left this country weak. You let our enemies laugh at us. You divided Americans, and now I'm the one fixing what you broke." His supporters cheered, waving their red caps high in the air. But others in the audience sat still, waiting, watching. The tension was palpable, like the entire theater was holding its breath. Then Barack Obama leaned forward slowly, resting both hands lightly on the table. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. He let the silence stretch for just a second longer, enough to make every person in that theater lean closer, hanging on his next words. And then in a calm, steady voice, he delivered a line that would echo far beyond that night. "Real strength is standing tall without pushing someone else down." For a moment, nothing. 10 full seconds of silence, no cheers, no murmurs, no movement. Just thousands of people frozen in their seats, processing what they just heard. Then it happened, the eruption. The crowd exploded, a wave of thunderous applause and cheers crashing across the theater. People rose to their feet, some clapping, some shouting, others wiping tears from their eyes. It was more than just a response, it was a release. The cameras zoomed in on Trump's face. His jaw tightened. His smirk was gone. His eyes shifted slightly, scanning the crowd, searching for control. But in that moment, he no longer had it. For a few precious seconds after Obama's words, the silence was absolute. It was the kind of silence you feel deep in your chest, heavy, electric, alive. And then the theater exploded. The sound was deafening. A tidal wave of cheers, applause, and shouts rolled across the room like thunder. People leapt from their seats, clapping until their palms stung, voices breaking as they screamed Obama's name. Some hugged each other, overcome with emotion. Others sat frozen, tears streaming down their faces, still processing the weight of what had just happened. A few rows back, a woman covered her mouth, whispering to the person next to her, "I've never seen anything like this." Cameras swung wildly, capturing moments of raw, unfiltered reaction, wide-eyed astonishment, trembling smiles, and hands raised high in unity. And then, as if the room's energy wasn't enough, it spilled online in real time. Within seconds, the hashtag #StandTall flashed across Twitter, trending nationally before the exchange even ended. Clips of Obama's calm but devastating line flooded Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, racking up hundreds of thousands of views in minutes. Inside the theater, you could feel the shift. It wasn't just a political moment anymore. It was emotional. It was personal. People weren't cheering for policies, they were cheering for something deeper: dignity, respect, and the strength to rise without tearing others down. In that instant, Obama didn't just answer Trump. He captured the hearts of thousands inside the room and millions across the country. As the thunderous applause rolled through the theater, the camera zoomed in on Donald Trump's face, and the image told a story louder than any words. His complexion flushed deep red, his jaw clenched tight, and his lips pressed into a thin, forced line. He grabbed his microphone, leaning forward, desperate to cut in. That's not true, folks. Don't believe that. It's just empty talk." But the crowd wasn't listening. The noise swallowed his words whole. Even his supporters scattered among the audience hesitated. Some clapped weakly, others glanced around nervously, realizing the shift in the room. Trump tried again, louder. This time his voice strained, almost cracking. "I've done more for this country than any president in history, including him." This time the cameras caught it all, the tapping of his fingers against the table, the restless shifting in his chair, the tightness in his expression. This wasn't the confident, untouchable Trump America was used to seeing. This was a man losing control of the stage. Across from him, Barack Obama sat still, calm, steady. His hands rested lightly on the table, his expression unshaken. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react. He simply waited, allowing Trump's outbursts to collapse under their own weight. And the more Trump fought to dominate the room, the more power slipped through his fingers. The moderator glanced toward the audience, scanning the sea of raised hands. And then a woman stood up slowly from the fourth row, clutching the microphone with both hands. Her voice trembled slightly, but there was strength behind it, the kind born from living the struggle every day. "My name is Carla Rodriguez," she began softly. "I'm a teacher from Tempe, and my students ask me questions I can't always answer." She paused, taking a breath before speaking the words that would shift the room's energy. "How do you lead when the country feels so divided?" The question hung heavy in the air. The crowd went silent, a rare, fragile quietness in a night full of noise. For the first time, this wasn't about policies or applause lines. It was about something deeper, about fear, exhaustion, and hope. Somewhere in the back, a man lowered his MAGA sign. A woman in the front wiped a tear she didn't expect. Even those who came ready to argue stopped to listen. Carla's question belonged to everyone. In that moment, the stage didn't just hold two men fighting for dominance. It became a mirror reflecting a country struggling to find its way back together. And every person in that theater, and millions watching at home, felt the same weight in their chest. We're broken, but we want to believe we can heal. Barack Obama leaned forward, his eyes fixed gently on Carla Rodriguez. He nodded once slowly, almost as if he was taking a moment to absorb the weight of her words before speaking. "Carla," he began softly, his voice steady and warm. "First, thank you, not just for your question, but for what you do every single day." The crowd stilled, hanging on his tone, measured sincere, carrying a quiet gravity. "Being a teacher," he continued, "means you stand on the front lines. You see our kids carry the weight of these divisions in their homes, in their classrooms, in their hearts." He paused, his voice lowering, pulling everyone closer. "And the truth is, leadership isn't about pretending those divisions don't exist. It's about showing respect even when we disagree, especially when we disagree." For a moment, you could feel the entire room breathe in unison. Obama's words settled over the audience like a soft blanket, comforting and challenging at the same time. Then, almost as if on cue, applause began, hesitant at first, then louder, stronger, until the entire room rose to its feet. Some clapped fiercely. Others simply stood in silence, their eyes glassy with emotion. The cameras cut to Carla, who lifted her hand to wipe away tears streaming down her cheek. She nodded gently, mouthing a quiet "thank you." In that instant, this wasn't about Democrats or Republicans. It wasn't about Obama versus Trump. It was about a shared longing to be heard, seen, and respected. The standing ovation was still echoing when Donald Trump suddenly leaned into his microphone, his face flushed red with frustration. He slammed his palm against the podium and barked, "This is all scripted. Obama's lying to you. That's the reason our country's divided." The words came out sharp, angry, but this time the crowd didn't cheer. Instead, a strange, unexpected sound filled the theater. It started as a low rumble, then grew louder, stronger boos. At first, Trump didn't realize what was happening. He pushed forward, raising his voice, pointing a finger at Obama. "Has weak, has failed. I'm the only one who can fix this mess." But the more he yelled, the louder the disapproval spread through the audience. Cameras zoomed in on the faces in the front row. Even some of Trump's supporters were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. A woman in a red MAGA hat lowered her sign. A man in a crisp suit shook his head slowly. For the first time all night, Donald Trump was no longer controlling the room. He looked around confused, his jaw tight, his breathing heavy. In his desperation to regain control, he had crossed a line and now he was paying for it. The tension in the theater shifted again when a young college student slowly rose from her seat, clutching the microphone with trembling hands. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I'll graduate with $80,000 in debt," she said, her words hanging in the air like heavy chains. The room fell silent instantly. No whispers, no murmurs. Even the cameras stopped panning for a moment, as if the entire world was holding its breath. Barack Obama turned his body, slightly locking eyes with the young woman. He didn't speak right away. He let the weight of her words sink in, not just for himself, but for the thousands watching. Finally, he leaned toward the microphone, his voice calm but firm. $80,000, he repeated slowly, pausing between each syllable. "That's not opportunity." Another pause, his gaze steady. "That's a trap." A ripple of gasps moved through the audience. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others nodded, their faces etched with frustration and quiet anger. This wasn't a political moment anymore. It was personal. It was about real lives, real struggles, and the crushing weight carried by an entire generation. Obama didn't just answer her question. He spoke her pain aloud for everyone to hear. The student lowered her head, tears glimmering in her eyes, and the audience sat frozen, absorbing the brutal truth that had just been laid bare. Within seconds of Obama's powerful statement, the digital world exploded. Phones lit up across the theater as audience members rushed to record, share, and post the moment. The hashtag #88000 appeared on Twitter instantly, and within just 30 minutes, the clip of Obama's response had over 2 million views. Tweets poured in from every corner of the country. $80,000, that's not opportunity. That's a trap. Finally, someone said it out loud. This isn't politics, this is reality. Obama just spoke for an entire generation. Watching this live, chills, absolute chills. Number 8,000 miles of news outlets scrambled to keep up, cutting into live programming to replay the viral clip. TikTok was flooded with reaction videos. Instagram Reels carried subtitled edits, and Facebook posts reached hundreds of thousands within minutes. For the first time in the night, the battle wasn't just in the theater anymore. It was nationwide. Obama's words had hit a nerve, and while the crowd inside was still processing the emotional weight, the outside world had already chosen a side. This wasn't just trending. It was a movement in real time. As the audience was still buzzing from Obama's powerful response, Donald Trump leaned into his microphone, forcing a stiff smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His voice came out sharp, almost dismissive. "She'll be fine, everyone figures it out." The words hit the room like a brick. At first there was silence, a stunned, heavy silence. Then it began. A wave of boos erupted, rolling through the theater like thunder. The sound grew louder, fiercer, angrier. People shook their heads in disbelief. One man yelled, "Are you serious?" Another woman near the front row shouted, "That's someone's life, not a joke." Camera zoomed in on Trump's face. He tried to maintain composure, but his jaw tightened, his breathing shallow. Social media lit up instantly within minutes. Out of Touch was trending alongside number 8,000. Clips of his cold, dismissive remark spread like wildfire, captioned, "Trump just told a student drowning in debt to figure it out." Unreal. This is why people are losing faith. He doesn't get it. At all. Leadership, this ain't it. By the time news anchors cut back to live coverage, Trump's image had taken a massive hit. What was meant to project strength instead revealed something else entirely: detachment, arrogance, and a total lack of empathy. For the first time that night, Trump wasn't just losing control of the room, he was losing America. Backstage at the Arizona Federal Theater, chaos erupted inside Trump's private war room. The air was thick with tension, the glow of phone screens lighting up the dark corners as notifications poured in nonstop. Trump's senior aides were huddled around a long glass table, voices rising, snapping at each other over strategy. "We need to get ahead of this now," one advisor shouted, waving his phone, showing a clip of Trump's dismissive remark about the student's debt already trending at 5 million views. "We can't let this spiral. Push out a statement now," another demanded. But every attempt to spin the narrative collapsed instantly. Social media was a wildfire, and no matter what talking points they drafted, the comments shredded them to pieces. Inside the room, Trump paced like a caged lion, his face flushed red, muttering under his breath. He grabbed one of the briefing papers and slammed it on the table. "This is rigged, they're twisting my words." But his aides knew the truth. No one was twisting anything. The clip was everywhere, raw and unedited, and public sentiment was turning fast. Phones buzzed nonstop with calls from Republican donors, some furious, others panicking. Cable news networks ran endless split-screen replays on one side, Obama delivering his $80,000 trap line, and on the other, Trump shrugging off the same student's struggle. Every second the team waited, the damage deepened. For the first time in years, Trump's inner circle didn't have a play. While chaos swallowed Trump's camp, the atmosphere behind Obama's backstage room was completely different, calm, composed, almost serene. Inside, the team didn't need to say much. They knew what had just happened. The energy was quiet but powerful, the kind of silence that comes when you realize the tide has completely turned in your favor. Obama stepped down from the stage, still holding the same calm smile that had carried him through the night. Michelle was waiting just beyond the curtains, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The two exchanged a brief look, no words, just a shared understanding. "We did what we came here to do." Obama whispered softly, his voice steady, confident. The staffers around him were trying to contain their excitement, but the sparkle in their eyes gave them away. Laptops and phones lit up with live updates. Hashtag Stand Tall was trending at 8 million tweets. The $80,000 trap clip had already hit 12 million views. News anchors across the nation were declaring, "Obama owns the moment." Michelle leaned closer, her smile warm but knowing. "You didn't just win the crowd tonight, Barack. You reminded them what leadership looks like." Obama nodded slowly, his gaze fixed, his tone composed but resolute. "This isn't about me winning, it's about the people seeing who's really listening." While Trump's team scrambled in panic, Obama walked calmly down the hallway, shaking hands with a few volunteers, greeting supporters one by one. Cameras captured the quiet confidence in his stride, a man who didn't need to gloat because the victory was already his. At that moment, there was no yelling, no chaos, only the quiet assurance of a leader who had just shifted the room and maybe even the country. By the next morning, the fallout had exploded beyond Phoenix. It became a global political earthquake. Major news outlets raced to cover the story, each headline sharper than the last. The New York Times led with a bold front-page banner, "Grace versus Noise Obamas. Calm triumph over Trump's chaos." The Washington Post didn't hold back either. "Obama outshines Trump in Phoenix Showdown, a masterclass in leadership." Within hours, CNN, MSNBC, and BBC World News were running wall-to-wall coverage. The viral hashtag #StandTall had crossed 30 million mentions worldwide, making it the #1 trending topic in over 20 countries. Clips of Obama's real strength and $80,000 trap moments looped endlessly on every nightly news broadcast. Anchors replayed the footage in slow motion, breaking down the expressions on Trump's face, the thunderous applause, and the instant shift in audience sentiment. Late-night hosts jumped on it too. On The Tonight Show, Jimmy Fallon opened with Trump tried to shout, but Obama stood tall. Literally, it's the shortest roast in history. The laughter from studio audiences only deepened the blow for Trump. International media joined the frenzy. The Guardian in the UK called it one of the most defining political debates of the decade. In Germany, Der Spiegel ran with "Obama leaves, Trump stumbling." America watches, Europe cheers. From Tokyo to Sydney, the world was watching, and it was clear who had won the night. That night in Phoenix was more than a debate. It became a cultural moment, a line in history that people would look back on, not as politics, but as a lesson in character. It wasn't just Democrats cheering or Republicans groaning. It was something far bigger. Across living rooms, diners, classrooms, and offices, Americans felt it in their bones. This was about dignity, composure, and real strength. For many, it was the first time they saw clearly that leadership wasn't about dominance, insults, or chaos. It was about how you carry yourself under fire. Obama's calm poise that night became a mirror showing an entire generation that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to not react in anger, but to rise with grace. Parents replayed the clips for their kids as a lesson in respect. Teachers shared it in classrooms as a model of conflict resolution. Workers talked about it at lunch tables, not as politics, but as life advice. It was no longer a clash between two men on a stage. It became a story etched into America's cultural memory, a night when the country learned that true strength doesn't shout, it stands tall. From the workplace to schools, even within families, everyone knows the feeling of being cornered. That moment when someone tries to belittle you, embarrass you, or strip away your dignity. It's universal. We've all been there, the boss who mocks you in front of coworkers, the classmate who laughs at your mistakes, the relative who thinks they can control your life with cruel words. In those moments, our first instinct is often to fight back with anger, to shout louder to prove we're not weak. But what if strength looks different? Obama's composure that night in Phoenix became a blueprint. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't match insult with insult. Instead, he showed the world that the calmest response can sometimes be the strongest. His story isn't just about politics. It's about life. About every time we've been pushed into a corner and forced to decide, will we lash out blindly or will we stand tall with dignity? That's why his words resonated so deeply. They weren't just an answer to Trump. They were a mirror held up to all of us. As the dust settles on that unforgettable night, one message lingers above all else. True leadership isn't about shouting louder, it's about standing taller. That's the lesson Phoenix gave the world. That strength is not measured by volume or by how many enemies you crush, but by how firmly you can rise without dragging others down. And maybe that's the reminder we all need, in our homes, at work, in our communities. Because when dignity meets courage, that's when real change begins. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. More shocking truths, more powerful lessons, and more stories the mainstream media won't show you are coming. And you won't want to miss what's next. The Phoenix Showdown wasn't just a battle of politics, it was a reminder for all of us. In life, there will always be people who try to push us down, humiliate us, or corner us with anger and arrogance. But strength doesn't come from shouting louder or striking back in rage. True strength is shown when we keep our dignity, when we refuse to let others drag us into the mud, and when we rise above with composure. Just like Obama that night, we can choose to respond with calm clarity instead of chaos. So the lesson is simple. You don't win by crushing others. You win by standing taller yourself. Whether at work, in school, or in your own family, carry yourself with the kind of strength that inspires respect, not fear. If this story moved you, don't just stop here. Hit subscribe to our channel for more eye-opening truths, powerful lessons, and explosive stories the mainstream media won't show you. Join our community because the next story might change the way you see the world.